Let's get ready to rumble!
Now, a lot of people think I get at American boxing, and I do at times. Some of the stuff they do over there is just baffling. I'm talking about the politics and some of the fans. But look, some of you who just expect USYK to get a pass into the hearts of the American boxing fans without earning it, in their opinion, without earning it, you've got to look at certain things, man. Like, you know, we can go back historically. Punches like Dempsey, Joe Louis, Foreman, Tyson, Liston, Marciano, all the way through to Wilder. And yes, you can question Wilder's resume, and you should question Wilder's resume. It's questionable. But even against Tyson Fury, where he didn't win a fight, how much knockdowns did he score altogether? About 4 knockdowns? And look at the knockout percentage. If you're going to be a cautious boxer and to have any chance of being popular amongst the American public, you have to at least be American. And you're going to have to talk a lot of shit. I mean, Chris Bird wasn't very popular, was he? I mean, after Deontay Wilder, he's the last American champion. Chris wasn't a puncher. And he weren't a smack talker. Or one of the last, him and Shannon Briggs probably. Shannon Briggs had a high knockout percentage. So if USYK, in 4 fights, hasn't scored 1 knockdown, he got a stoppage against Chaz Witherspoon. Not 1 knockdown. It's a hard sell. And he doesn't speak English. He doesn't trash talk. Doesn't say anything. But yet you want the Americans who expect way more. You have to remember, they have the most prolific list of champions in the history of the sport, America. Historically, in the heavyweight division. They do. Then add to that, boxing, I wouldn't say it's a fringe sport over there, but it's not as popular as it used to be. Especially with UFC and MMA. It's not as popular as it used to be. Look, USYK and his team, Khrushchev and Klimas, they don't care about that anyway. You know, they got Germany there, they got the Ukraine, they got Eastern Europe. I think he's quite popular in the UK as well. What's the problem? They don't need all the markets. Why do some people feel there's a need to fight back against what I'm saying to protect USYK? He's not popular in America, and there are reasons for that. It doesn't make him not a great fighter, but the circumstances are the circumstances. And the landscape in boxing is changing. You don't have to impress America no more like you did before. You don't have to do that no more. How much has he made from Anthony Joshua being a draw in London? And how much money has he made from the site fee in Saudi Arabia? That's where he really made his money. He just got a standard guarantee, mandatory purse for the first fight. But the second fight, 50-50 with AJ, not an American hand in sight having anything to do with it. Made a bag load of money. And he got the whole of the Ukraine to watch that fight for free. USYK is a legend in the Ukraine, a legend in Europe, but not in America. That's all I'm saying. Well, it's been a few days since Tyson Fury made his ultimatum to get this $500 million, and maybe they have got a response from the Saudis. Maybe they have, but we're not privy to that information. But as somebody said on my channel, Lloyd Crooks, after Fury and Bob Arum blew the last bag, and what you have to remember, right, it's not that they promised me or you the fight. They said they would sort out any financial compensation that Wilder was due in the arbitration. Bob Arum's own words. And yet, Eddie got the fight done. The Saudis were ready to bankroll the site fee, and they were off to fight Wilder. The question we have to ask now, because listen, I've said it many times, a lot of people are very disrespectful of a lot of businessmen around the world if they don't speak English or wear suits, like European suits and stuff. They think, these people are some ignorant motherfuckers who just come by money. And that's not the case. These guys are very serious people about their business. And do they take Tyson Fury serious now? Do they take Bob Arum serious? Is USYK Fury going to get the site fee? Has Tyson Fury and Bob Arum and Frank Warren, have they blew it from blowing the undisputed fight last year? Have they blew it? And it's a fair question. Going over some old transcripts, here's what Eddie Hearn said. Asked about Wilder arbitration being overlooked, Hearn said that's a question for Fury's team because they consistently told us and the Saudis that the arbitration was completely irrelevant. There's no way the fight could be stopped. So, right now, whoever is handing out the site fees from over that part of the world, they might be looking at Bob Arum as a joke and Tyson Fury as a joke. Have they blew it? Will there be a second chance? Here's the transcript I was looking for. Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury collapse left Saudi Arabia devastated, says Eddie Hearn. He told the DAZN boxing show that Saudi Arabian representatives were also disappointed. He talks about how there was not one positive comment from either side. Hearn continued that his contact, Prince Khalid, who made the Andy Ruiz fight, was devastated. I put so much pressure on these people. They didn't want the fight to be in August. Everybody wanted the fight in September. What they told me was right. It was very disappointing for them. They planned to build a stadium for this. They know us well enough that we couldn't do any more. Quite frankly, I failed on this fight, but I can look at myself in the mirror. And now Tyson Fury, all of a sudden, is just demanding 500 mil from the Saudis. And then you go to, oh, it's Eddie's fault. Eddie knew that they was in an arbitration, and he still went ahead with the fight. Well, Bob and Frank allowed him to go ahead and make all the running to make the fights, right? Eddie got the fight done. Bob Arum said the arbitration will not be an issue in the fight going ahead. He gave his word. And what people don't understand about boxing is your word between the promoters and the management people and the networks. Your word is very important. You can't sign a contract for every fucking stage of a negotiation, right? So your word that you're going to do this and that is important. Why is that important now? Well, let's look at one of the people who was on Team Fury who gave their word that the arbitration wouldn't be an issue. Look at Frank Warren. When Joseph Parker gave him his word that he was going to sign to fight Joe Joyce. But then Parker went and signed with Sky and got a deal with Sky. Do you see how pissed Frank was? You gave me your word. You gave me your word. Now the fight's back on now. It's on BT because Ben Shalom and Sky didn't want to get in the way of a perfectly good fight that they believe Parker can win. But just a few weeks back, Frank was talking about, you gave me your word. Well, your team gave the Saudis and us their word, and you went back on it. Now, they don't need the Saudis to do the fights. They don't need them, necessarily. But if Tyson wants these exorbitant purses that he's mentioning, they need the Saudis. Maybe Bob can clean it up behind the scenes with the Saudis. Maybe he can. Tell Tyson Fury to shut the F up and let me do my job, you do yours. Or they let Klimas and Khrushchev handle the negotiations right now. Maybe the Saudis don't want to talk to Bob Arum after 2021. Predictably, the whole situation with Devin dumping the Ring magazine belt, or supposedly doing that, has broke down into racial division, with ESPN and Ring magazine coming under scrutiny for not having Devin in their list, practicing racial bias. Somebody said, well, how can it be racially biased? One of them, either ESPN or the Ring, have Crawford number one, and they said, well, if it was racially biased, Crawford wouldn't be number one. Well, Crawford has accomplished a lot in the sport. Lightweight champion, undisputed, 140-pound champion, made about 8 defenses of his welterweight title. It would be hard to deny him a position in the top 2, 3, number one. It would be hard to shortchange Crawford with racial bias and keep any credibility, whether you were the Ring magazine or ESPN. People get suspicious, isn't it? Like, if I was doing a pound-for-pound list as a black uploader and I omitted a European fighter who was an undisputed, 4-belt undisputed champion, I would come under scrutiny for practicing racial bias. I know I would. Pound-for-pound lists are very subjective. Pound-for-pound lists are very agenda-based, and they always have been, for the most part. I wouldn't get too worked up about it if I was Devin. We move on. Congrats has to go to Cali and Nice, Sound, and Wasserman. Because they've put this card on here, on DAZN, KSI versus Swarms, and they've also got a deal with Channel 5. And do they have any links with Sky? I don't know. So they've managed to leave the Sauerland thing behind now, come back to England, work with Eddie, work with DAZN, work with Adam Smith and Sky, and work with Channel 5. They're not tied anywhere. They're rogues. So congrats to them. Somebody was complaining on Twitter that there's a lot of small hall fighters who can't get on in the game, and these YouTubers are stepping up and messing it up for them. Listen, small hall fighters have always struggled, right? Before there was small hall boxing in the UK, they used to have the boxing booths, which was basically an attraction in the fairs. Fairs used to be very popular in the United Kingdom. And people who owned the booth would set up a tent at the fair. They'd have a few boxers there. And if any of the crowd fancied their chances of going 3 rounds with the booth fighter, they'd hand over half a crown, a couple of pence or whatever to fight the booth fighter. And if you could go to 3 rounds, you would share some of the nobbins that get thrown in the ring. And people who just wanted to watch the fights would have to pay whatever fee to get in the booth to see the action, right? You know, Jimmy Wilde, Randolph Turpin, Freddie Mills, and a few more fighters came through the booth circuit. And it was very tough. You could be away from home for months just traveling around with the fair, with the booth circuit to make your little scraps. Whether KSI or Jake Paul were putting on cards on Triller or DAZN, there's probably only a few small hall promoters in Britain who are functional today. You know what I mean? Like, able to put on consistent cards. You got Fight Zone, which is ran by one of the Hobsons. Is it Dennis Hobson's son? Forgot his name. It could actually be Dennis Hobson. I know his son plays a part. They run things up north of England. And then you got Steve Goodwin. Is he still doing all them York Hall shows? I haven't been for a while. Since before COVID, I haven't been up to York Hall. There doesn't always have to be somebody to blame. I thought KSI's opponents were terrible. Perhaps DAZN should have been monitoring his opposition a little more stringently. You know, no disrespect to Swarms. Hopefully he can spit better bars than he can throw hands. Although, you know, KSI is in phenomenal shape. Looks like he's been working hard on his strength and conditioning. He fought 2 fights in one night. The Mexican looked like he was undernourished compared to KSI. You know, what was his qualifications for the fight? Oh, he's a pro boxer, so what? I did like Deji's performance, though. I did. Finally got his W. Jarrett Anderson, recovering from a hand injury, I believe his right hand. He came out in a convict's uniform to Akon and Styles P's song, I'm Locked Up, dedicated to his brother, who's doing some prison time. Started southpaw and then went orthodox. His opponent, who boxing scene tried to say was a fringe contender, he let Anderson get away with the bullying tactics. He boxed well, this rough cannon, early on moving and jabbing, but he never settled and he couldn't build off that. It was a competitive first round. Some people were saying it's ring rust, why Jared was getting tagged. You know, like, it's the first round, his opponent is fresh, he's not totally devoid of boxing skills. You will have a few conundrums to work out. It's no big deal. If it happens round after round after round, then you may have a point. The Serbian wanted to give it a big effort. In the second round, he came out looking like he might be a bit more aggressive, threw some jabs. He moved pretty well around the ring. Maybe he was a little rusty. I don't know if that's the case. Anderson for a right hook on the break when the referee clearly told him to stop punching, and he was admonished for the infringement. Knocked out his opponent's gum shield. Anderson threw a lot of jabs to the body all fight. Sometimes he looks a little crude when he leads with the left hook or the right hook. But I don't think Rough Cannon was in shape. I don't think he was in shape, and Jared took advantage of that and started walking him down and roughing him up a little in the second. Put a forearm in his face. And then there was a right hand over the top. I don't know how powerful the shot was, but I didn't take it. There was definitely something on the punch. and it knocked Cannon out. Second round knockout. He didn't like the pressure of Cannon. Maybe he wasn't in shape, or he was a bit intimidated. He didn't look like a concussive punch, and he didn't look concussed. It looked like he had enough. The step up in competition they were talking about may be needed. It may be needed. We need to see what this kid can do. You know, people can say he's only 22. Give him time. Give him time. Give him time to do what? To get bored. To get complacent. Sometimes you outgrow the level of opposition you're fighting. And this is the case here. And yes, the other case is once you step up, you can't really go back. Once you have that step up fight, and let's say you're successful in it, the momentum, the boxer, his trainer, his promoter, and the network who are broadcasting his fights is forward. And even if there are chinks that begin to unveil as a result of the step up, well, this is where you are now. Until you suffer a bad defeat or you iron out the mistakes, they're going to ride it for as long as they can. Is what it is. It's the nature of the business. I was going to say beast, but there's no need to say that. The business. It's not for bleeding hearts. Then we have Richard Torrez, America's silver medalist at super heavy. Very squat, powerfully built, 6'2", 23 years of age. Very aggressive. Just basically walk through Canedo, if that's how you pronounce his name. 44-second knockout. Tim Bradley was saying that's the worst way to get knocked out, landing flat on your face. There was 2 knockdowns. The fight was basically fought on one side in one corner of the ring, and Torrez just basically puts his head down and comes over the top with these big hammer type punches, hooks. There's nothing sophisticated about it, but it's exciting, and we'll see how far he can take that. The Bridgerweight division hasn't really set the boxing world alight, but it looks like Torrez could campaign there. What's the weight limit for Bridgerweight? 225? That's what he weighed yesterday. 225 and a quarter. His opponent was 215. So we're not dealing with big heavyweights here. When Richard comes up against the 17 stoners with the 80+ inch reaches, you can imagine it's going to be a bit of a battle, but we'll see what skills he develops to try and overcome that when he gets there, if he gets there. But yo, it's fun watching the two-handed windmill attack at this stage against limited opposition. It's fun. And he doesn't have to be an elite heavyweight. He just has to be marketable, matched well in good fights, and he could have a career of sorts. Main event, COMMEY versus PEDRAZA. Excellent matchup. COMMEY over the first 6 threw the more damaging punches. The cut in the 6th round that COMMEY suffered over his left eye changed the course of the bout a little. PEDRAZA was bruised up over his left eye. And this was a really good fight. Boxer versus boxer puncher. Because COMMEY can box. He can box. COMMEY was the harder puncher, but let's not underplay PEDRAZA's work to the body. That served him well for the late rounds. That dug the foundation for his late round finish. COMMEY had his moments late on as well. But it was a fight of 2 halves. COMMEY threw the harder punches and bossed a lot of the early rounds. And PEDRAZA's boxing got him back into it. And it was scored a draw. Fair result. No complaints. Let's do it again. It was a good fight. And Bob should replay that fight. The fight was fought at 140. Neither of them look out of place at 140. They're both long, lean guys coming up from 135. PEDRAZA coming from 130, 135 to 140. COMMEY hit PEDRAZA with some bombs early on. And the fact that he didn't even get a knockdown leads to 2 possible conclusions. Either PEDRAZA has a better chin than what he displayed against Tank Davis, or moving up to 140 is taking some of the beast out of COMMEY's power. Andre Rossier, he read Richard COMMEY the riot act at the end of the 9th, because it looked like Richard gave the round away. Maybe the body work that PEDRAZA invested in was getting to him. It was a close round. And that round was crucial. That was a crucial round. I'd like to see this one ran again, to be honest. It was a really good fight. Let's wrap it up. I saw MURAT GASSIEV in Serbia flatline this 42-year-old American geezer, out of shape, but still undersized. And MURAT GASSIEV just looks like an old, stocky heavyweight who hasn't fought anybody since 2018 when he was washed on the scorecards by Alexander Usyk. He hasn't fought anyone of note. And listen, I enjoyed the knockout Good knockout. Hopefully he's going to step up his opposition soon. He's 28 years of age, needs to get a move on. But it was the hype that a lot of people were greeting this knockout with. Oh, some opponents said that GASSIEV hits harder than Wilder. The heavyweight division better be on notice. You're thinking, you're getting carried away. You're really getting carried away. And it's not GASSIEV's fault, it's the people who just leave you baffled at times. You know, like some fighters coming for some severe criticism, taking on genuine, world-class, highly ranked opposition. And then some people get praised for knocking over Mickey Mouse. The equilibrium online is just crazy. Just crazy. Florian MARKU, he took it back to Albania on Friday on a card that Sky put on YouTube for free. And he was lucky to get the decision, yeah? He scored a dodgy knockdown against his Mexican opponent and got floored himself, quite a heavy knockdown. But he got the points decision because there would have been a riot in there if he didn't get it. It is what it is. Hometown cooking, no doubt. But it was a stadium event, an open-air stadium. I don't know how much people were in there, but thousands of people turned up, thousands. And Ben Shalom was there and he was saying, yo, we might come back here again. Bring some Sky fighters on the card. I mean, who doesn't want to fight in front of a full stadium? And possibly have MARKU headlining again. Why not? This could be a new territory for Sky. Mind you, I don't know how far they can go with MARKU though, because he definitely ain't world class. Did well to get up from that knockdown with a great left hook that dropped him. And he done well to get up from it. The saving grace for MARKU, perhaps he could win a belt if the matchmaking was right and the timing was right. He could get a belt, you never know. Stranger things have happened. But he doesn't look world class to me. But he's a good scrapper and doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. He does have a fan base. And there must be some good fights out there for him. There must be. A lot of people are talking about the Chris Congo fight. They're both on Sky. That should be next. Unless you're Scandinavian or you used to buy the boxing news in the 80s and 90s like I did. The name Mogen's PALLE won't mean much to you, but, you know, I always remember picking up the boxing news and seeing that name, his promotions in his cards. He promoted Ayub Kaluli's world title fights. And I'm sure he worked with Gert Bo Jakobsen. You see, them names there, I'm probably losing people at this point here. But he was a powerful promoter in his time. He passed away 88 years of age. R.I.P.